So there we are, live on YouTube. Dr. Sorah Dubitsky, the mic is all yours.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sorah Dubitsky, and I'm live on YouTube, and I'm here to talk about A Course in Miracles. And sometimes it's funny to me, that my in my other profession, I'm a sex educator, human sexuality educator. Um, the funny thing about that course is that the conversations or the curriculum I have, I talk so little about sex, or what we imagine sex to be, PIV. But if you talk about sex, the first thing people think of is PIV. What does that mean? Penis and vagina. But human sexuality is so much more than that. And because I've been studying A Course in Miracles for 40 years or 45 years, I can't but or I cannot but introduce the spiritual element into human sexuality. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Today, what I'm going to talk about is, and what I have been talking about, are some of the key foundational concepts of A Course in Miracles. Hello, Duff. I found Lynn, or Lynn found me. So I've been talking about key foundational concepts of the course. And the bottom line, key concept of A Course in Miracles to me is this idea that God did not create the world. Like, the first time I heard that, it was mind blown. And yet it was also for me really comforting, because if we look around at the world, and I've said this before in previous weeks, like it's nuts. And as a kid, I would question, if there's a God, why is everything so messed up? And we would, I grew up Jewish, and my parents would go to synagogue periodically, or in the high holy days. That was the big thing. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and we'd celebrate Passover. But we go, you'd go to synagogue and pray, beseech God, God save me, or God grant me this, or God grant me that. And then to look at the world and think, if there's a loving God, how could war exist? How could famine exist? How could brutality exist? How could this world be? How could death exist? In death is like God's final punishment. And every year we pray on Yom Kippur to be inscribed in the Book of Life, and I never understood again, why this world was the way it was, until I found A Course in Miracles, or correctly, it found me. And I was, I've spoken before about I was fragmented and really was looking for something. And A Course in Miracles dropped in my lap, and that became my spiritual path. And it became my spiritual path as soon as I heard that one sentence: God did not create this world. And then what I've been talking about since then is, well, what did God create? Or is there a God at all? So I wanted to read a couple of sections, and then, talk about, first talk about what the issue is, like describe the world that, you know, we've seen so much. It's like everything's been magnified. There, there's sometimes I think there's so much hate. And that's kind of, what the course would say, that's a reflection of what you think you are, which is kind of unnerving. What do you mean it's a reflection of what I think I am? Which we'll read about. But then the course also adds that there is another way of looking at the world. There is another way of living in the world. And that's what we would call that, God. God is the loving way of living in the world. One definition. So I just want to read, this is a very poignant section. This is my copy of A Course in Miracles, well used. This is only, let's see, 1988. I got this. So how many years is that? I can't do math anymore. AI has taken away that ability. So this is how it describes the world. Um, the world you see is the delusional system of those made mad by guilt. And I'll get back to this idea of guilt. We'll equate guilt with this belief we're separate, separate from source, separate from love, separate from each other. Um, at this point, I'll equate it with guilt. The world you see is the delusional system of those made mad by guilt. Look carefully at this world, and you will realize that this is so. For this world is the symbol of punishment. Think about that. It's everyone is afraid of death, the ultimate punishment. To continue, for this world is a symbol of punishment, and all the laws that seem to govern it are the laws of death. I'm thinking of the word retribution. We like an eye for an eye. That's what the world is taught, an eye for an eye. You did it, the world's golden rule. The golden rule is supposed to be um, do it unto others as you would have done unto you. The world's golden rule is do it to them before they do it to you. Think about that. So it's like we walk around anxious and not knowing why. Existential anxiety is somehow, somewhere, the axe is going to fall. And this is very deep. That's another thing about A Course in Miracles. It's deep. It goes to the core of a thought system. It questions all your beliefs. It questions your values. Um, the teaching is, on one level, very simplistic. You go from having a perception of fear to a perception of love. My husband used to say, and that's the miracle, from love, you go from love to fear. Jerry Jampolsky wrote a book, Love is Letting Go of Fear. My husband, oh God, did I lose my train of thought? It'll come back. Um, yeah, it'll come back. So it was related, trust me. The world you see, so I'm going to read. For this world is a symbol of punishment. Children are born into it through pain and in pain. Their growth is attended by suffering, and they learn of sorrow and separation and death. So we learn to be anxious. Attack, defense, attack, defense. Sometimes I think, like, and as I'm walking around just living my life, um, this sensory or visceral feeling I have sometimes is defending against the world. There's what's the word I'm looking for? A body of research called terror management theory. And it talks about the ultimate fear. The existential fear is fear of death. And yet if we walked around feeling that we're going to die, or knowing we're going to die, like, why do anything? Why bother? And so we construct ways of having a world that's meaningful. And in a way, that's what the course is saying. We have constructed ideas and beliefs that give us meaning. And that's related to this idea that God did not create the world. When you look at, we grow up, I look at kids a lot. We that innocence or the love they exude, the joy they exude. And yet as they get older, somehow that gets kind of, I don't know, washed out of them. And the somehow the older we get, the more we have to kind of defend ourselves and defend our ideas. Um, and to go back to children growing up and suffering, and their minds seem to be trapped in their brain, and its powers to decline if their bodies are hurt. Now I'm older, so brain decline is one of those things that starts concerning me or has started to concern me. Their minds seem to be trapped in their brain and its powers to decline if their bodies are hurt. They lose what they love, perhaps the most insane belief of all, and their bodies wither and gasp and are laid in the ground and are no more. Not one of them has thought that God is cruel. If this were the real world, God would be cruel. So what that just described is again, look at the world: war, famine, attack, defense, attack. There's a line that says, defenses do what they would defend against. If I'm walking around feeling defensive, I'm armoring myself, and that armor shows, that armor, gives me a posture of defense. Others can take that as attack. And then you get this cycle of attack, defense. And again, just look around at the world. If anyone thinks that the world is sane, then you don't need A Course in Miracles. There at the very beginning of the book, it talks about it says this is a required course. What does that mean? Well, these days I take it to mean that it's required by you. This is your path. If people pick this up and resonate to it in any way, then this is your path and it's required. And the whole focus is forgiveness. So one way of, my core theme here, God did not create the world of suffering, the world of pain, the world of retribution. It's a popular word in the conversation these days, in the language. That is not of God. The world of fear, that is not of God. What God is, and it talks about that in other lessons. One lesson I love: God is but love, and therefore so am I. So what we come to understand is that our reality, and what refers to the real world. The real world is this, three-dimensional, 3D world, but it's a forgiven world. What do I mean by it's a forgiven world? It means that we have found love in our hearts, and we can see the world through that love. we can forgive. We can recognize that humans are what, nuts? That everyone is really the same. Everyone is walking around and wants the same thing. We all want love. We all want, at least basic needs. Of course, I still want to be a billionaire, but oh well, that was a joke. Um, that we all have the same needs and wants. And the way we get what we want is through the extension of love, through the extension of forgiveness. It's everything becomes kinder and gentler. And I have to say that because it needs to be practiced. That's why we have a workbook. The course is 3 books. The first one, it's yes, my nose leaks. The first one book is a text, which is very theoretical. There's a workbook of daily lessons that help reinforce, what the thought system is. And there's a manual for teachers that is probably the simplest to read and understand. And it describes or goes deeper into some key concepts like, let's see if I can pick something quickly from the manual. How is peace possible in this world? I ask myself that question a lot. So that's from the manual for teachers. But to get back to, what is this world? Or what is the real world? And like, who's God and where's God? And what do you mean the world isn't real? Again, this is something I spoke about a while ago, that even in cognitive psychology, I have a doctorate in psychology. Been studying, teaching psychology for years, years and years and years, and years and years. Even in cognitive psychology, it talks, a couple of concepts, cognitive structures, schema, scripts, that as we go along in the world, we make, neuronal connections in the brain. The brain's very plastic. And they didn't, brain research really accelerated, since I've been studying psychology. And connections are made in the brain based on experience, based on learning, based on what we've experienced in the world. We make connections, and those connections become part of our understanding of what the world is. And sometimes they're wrong. And sometimes those understandings are no longer useful. So, you grow up with a fear. Let's say a lot of people are afraid of cats. I'm a cat lover. And they have an opportunity to, and so they stay away from them. They run when they see them. I mean, there's a lot of fear there, a lot of anxiety about cats. And then, it's possible through behavioral conditioning. That cats might not be the best example. Fear of flying. People are afraid to fly. And then behavioral conditioning, they're able to learn they might not love flying, but they can fly. They get on a plane. And all that behavioral conditioning does is rewire the brain. And in a way, that's what A Course in Miracles does. I will bring up my husband. My husband used to talk about, he used to go to the gym a lot, and he would be on the treadmill. And while he was on the treadmill, he would have an image of like a work site going on in his brain, like building. And he would, he would see a scaffold going up. and bricks being laid, and everything that goes into building a building. And this occurred over a period of time. And that's such a good description of what it's like to create new connections in the brain. So things that we were afraid of no longer frighten us. Long thoughts, thoughts that we've had no longer, are proven to be untrue. And the course process for that is going from love to fear. It's forgiveness. So what is God then? What is God? I'm checking the time. What is the real world? I mentioned if this were the real world, um, God would be cruel, because and that's people worship a God, and people are free to worship whatever. But if God is but love, and that's a workbook lesson, if God is but love, and therefore so am I, then how can God be a murderer? How can a loving God demand sacrifice? Maybe next week, next time I do this, I'll get into the figure of Jesus, who is the protagonist of the course, and gives practitioners a whole other way of looking at the crucifixion and the figure of Jesus, which instills fear in a lot of people. I as a kid, I remember walking into a church with my little friend who lived next door. Her parents were Catholic, and on Sundays they like to take drives, and they took a drive. They would go to the church, I think St. Rose of Lima or Lima. And I remember walking into this church, and there's this guy, on a cross, semi-nude, with blood, drawn on him. And it's like, what we're trying to use, what a scary image. This is what God does. God murders his son. And that's what that line about, if this were the real world, God would be cruel. So we have this image of that there's a God that punishes, there's a God that will punish others for your sins, that no matter what, you're a sinner, and it engenders fear. That's what I'm talking about. That story engenders fear. But there's another story, and that's what A Course in Miracles is about. The other story is a story of love. The story is, no, God is not responsible for punishing his son. Again, that's a whole teaching, and I don't really want to dwell on that now. What the message of the crucifixion is, that I will mention, is the idea that Jesus forgave. Marianne Williamson, if you know who she is, talks about this, that Jesus on the cross, in that teaching, Jesus on the cross didn't say, you stupid people, what are you doing to me? Or I'm going to come back and I'm going to kill you all. I mean, that is not what has come down through religious teachings. What Jesus said in those teachings is, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they're doing. That's an attitude of forgiveness. Now, again, course teachings. And there's a section that talks about the message of the crucifixion. But in course teachings, it says that the message of the crucifixion is teach only love, for that is what you are. Teach only love, for that is what you are. And think about that for a moment, that our reality, with that's a saying, your reality is pure love. And if Jesus on the cross is still demonstrating or teaching love, can you do that in your life? What's the line? It's something like, the crucifixion is an extreme example of the power of love, and you're not asked to repeat it. Think about that also. You're not asked to make a sacrifice to find the peace of God. And that's what the Course promises. It promises, if nothing else, that you will achieve peace of mind. It's not promising, nirvana, you're going to escape the world. It's very much grounded in your everyday life. I'm laughing because I think, oh, right, okay. And it needs to be applied. It's the thinking of the Course. So to summarize, I've got like 5 minutes. There's two thought systems, again, to go back to the bottom line theme. God did not create this world. There's two thought systems. And one thought system is based on fear and the belief that God did create this world. And not only did God create this world, but God's going to punish you for whatever you did. I remember sitting in synagogue and Day of Atonement, like, what did I do? Why do I have to atone? So that's one thought system, and it's a thought system of fear. And that's what, when it talks about the world, that's what it's talking about. The world is a place of fear. The other thought system, which God did create, is a thought system of love. There's, many lessons that say God is but love, and therefore so am I. Love created me like itself is another lesson. And the power of decision is my own. I'll end on that. And what that means is anything that happens, I can choose. I can align my mind with fear and say, I could decide for fear and say, this is horrible, this is terrible. I gotta, panic and be anxious and do something, and, all the yada yada in the brain. Or my other choice is to think along the lines of God and forgive and relax and breathe and connect and to what is called the real world. And that's the world that brings us peace. So with that, it's 2:57. Anyone on YouTube, please comment, please ask questions. I will review what you wrote. I also have a podcast. I have a podcast, Birds, Bees, and Beyond, for the sex ed course that I teach. So this is Birds, Bees, and Beyond. I also have a Substack newsletter, drsoradubitsky.substack.com, drsoradubitsky.substack.com. And I will be here next week on Tuesday at 2:30, and I will sign off. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Dove. I'm seeing them in the, in the room with me, and I will see you guys next week. And please, comments, questions. I'm part of it, and I'm done.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sorah. And Dub, you have something to say? You're muted.
You're mute.
I wanted to comment that I really like the way you share. You come from your heart. You come from your pure substance. Everything is like creative as you go along. That's what total trust is. Trust is stepping back and allowing it to flow through you. So that's my experience with you. Thank you so much. Love you.
Yes, love you, Dove. And I just got a list of I used my chat GPT and I got a list of hotels.
Ah, okay. Very good. Love
Very
you.
good. All right, you
All
guys.
right,
Thank
love
you
you.
all so very
Okay,
much. I'm
thank you,
closing
Lynn.
out.
I'll see you next Tuesday. I'll still be here, and then we'll talk about anything else after that. Okay, love
Sounds
you.
good. Bless you guys.